I thank God for slavery. I thank God for the crack house. If it wasn't for the crack house, come on somebody, God wouldn't have never been able to use me how he can use me now. And if it wasn't for slavery, I might be somewhere in Africa worshiping a tree.
What's up, everyone? Coach D speaks here. So Ron DeSantis' Department of Education is continuing to try and whitewash Black history in order to make it palatable enough to protect the perceived fragility of white kids or white racists. So recently, Ron was asked about this new approach to teaching Black history, where they're basically saying that slaves should be thankful that they were enslaved because they learned skills that they later use for employment. They don't talk about the killing, raping, separating families, whipping, and torturing, just the good stuff that happened.
Well, you should talk to them about it. I mean, I didn't do it, and I wasn't involved in it. But I think what they're doing is I think that they're probably going to show some of the folks that eventually parlayed, being a blacksmith into doing things later in life. But the reality is, all of that is rooted in whatever is factual. They listed everything out. And if you have any questions about it, just ask the Department of Education. You can talk about those folks. But I mean, these were scholars who put that together. It was not anything that was done politically.
First of all, notice how Ron says folks because he won't use the word slave, because he's trying to take all negative connotations out of the word slavery. Notice how he says he wasn't a part of it, but then goes to explaining it like he was a part of it. And the reason why? He was a part of it. He's always talking about fighting the woke, and teaching real Black history would be woke in his opinion. We've also seen him be a part of banning books and speaking out against affirmative action. So you know he was in the room and definitely part of the conversation when it came to changing the history of slavery. But you know what? First, let's talk about the blatant racism in all of this. It's pretty racist to assume that Black people were just roaming around Africa with no skills until white men kidnapped them and forcefully removed them from their lands. I mean, certainly there were no Black people in Africa who could ever learn how to use their hands to make things, so they needed white people to enslave them so that they could learn those skills. Also, saying they learned skills is being used to say slavery wasn't that bad because at least they learned skills. It's being used to dismiss all of the atrocities of slavery. Like seriously, would you tell a battered woman that she now has the skills to be a nurse because she learned how to bandage herself up? Does that not sound like some of the dumbest shit you've ever heard? Because it is. It's also pretty racist to water down Black history in order to keep white kids from feeling bad about their ancestors. Like poor little Johnny might think his great-great-grandfather was a horrible man. That's because he was, little Johnny. Your great-great-grandfather was horrible. Does Ron also realize when slaves did become free, there was no one waiting around to hand them jobs? In fact, they then created laws to re-enslave them. The chances that an actual slave used his skills for paid work are slim. Chances are they died a slave and possibly, and this is wishful thinking, possibly passed those skills on to their kids. And that's if their kids hadn't already been sold off to another family. But those are the realities of slavery. The realities of slavery are not that slaves were so lucky to learn such employable skills that they went off into America and they used those skills to better the lives of their families. That's not what happened in history. They went on to be persecuted more and frankly are still fighting for equality today. And let's not forget this part.
And if you have any questions about it, just ask the Department of Education. You can talk about those folks. But I mean, these were scholars who put that together. It was not anything that was done politically.
Oh, they were scholars, right, Ron? Okay. Well, this is one of the scholars that Ron is talking about. She allegedly helped rubber stamp this BS.
I thank God for slavery. I thank God for the crack house. If it wasn't for the crack house, come on somebody, God wouldn't have never been able to use me how he can use me now. And if it wasn't for slavery, I might be somewhere in Africa worshiping a tree.
That was Kim Daniels, a black woman who obviously believes this lie that black folks in Africa are idiots worshiping anything. She's one of the scholars that Ron is talking about. And let's be honest, Ron knows all of this. The GOP knows all of this. His Department of Education knows all of this. This is not an attempt to teach what they think is real history. This is an attempt to erase and rewrite history. And they think kids are stupid. Kids are going to know this was forced labor. They're going to ask, how'd you guys get them to learn these skills without paying them? They're going to ask, why weren't they paid? They're going to ask follow-up questions like, do you have any stats on how many of them were actually paid later for those skills? Were they paid as much as white people? If all this was for their benefit, why weren't they freed sooner? I think this tweet from Eric Swalwell sums it up perfectly. If you're trying to teach the benefits of slavery, you're pro-slavery. Ron DeSantis is definitely pro-slavery. Period.
Hey Midas Mighty, love this report? Continue the conversation by following us on Instagram @MeidasTouch to keep up with the most important news of the day. What are you waiting for? Follow us now.